Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the Theatres Improvement Scheme in association with the Wolfson Foundation. My name is Josh McTaggart, and I'm the Chief Executive here at Theatres Trust. And today I'm going to be in conversation with Jack Heaton, who hopefully you can also see on our screens, who is our Services and Programmes Manager. And we're going to be talking a bit about the scheme and then answering some questions. We'll be discussing what the fund supports, who is eligible, the criteria that we use at the Trust to assess applications, and then we'll move into the Q&A in the second half of the session. Firstly, before we jump in, I think it's really important that we thank the Wolfson Foundation, who've supported this scheme now for a number of years, and they're the reason we can keep giving out this grant to theatres across the country. So huge thank you to the Wolfson Foundation for their ongoing support. The Wolfson Foundation share our commitment to the importance of sustainability and the great strides that the theatre sector has been making in this area over the last number of years. Since this first award began in 2021, where we had only 31 applications for the first round, we now receive 70 or 80 applications every year. And so that's the reason we are doing this webinar, so we can share information about what makes a really strong application and how we begin to assess those applications. It's really great that more and more organisations are applying for this grant. But that means there is more challenge for those who are applying, and also it makes it more challenging from our end to make sure we can give the direct one-to-one support we might have previously given for applications. And we sadly no longer can have those one-to-one conversations about grants because of the number of applications we receive, and we are a very small team. So this is why we're doing this webinar. So hopefully there's enough information for those who are interested in applying. We have this session today. There are comprehensive guidance notes on our website, which has more detail in written form on everything that we're discussing today. And really importantly, and we'll refer to this again and again today, the terms and conditions for the grant scheme, which should answer every question that you may have and goes into a lot of detail. And those are also available on the website. We really want applying to this scheme to be as straightforward as it can be, and that's the purpose of today. So please make sure you use this time to ask any questions, and we'll try and answer those at the end of the conversation that Jack and I will be having. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jack, who's going to take us through a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we kick off our conversation.
Thanks, Josh. I just wanted to start off by saying I'm not in a storage cupboard. I'm in the archive room at the Theatres Trust. I realise when I turn my camera on it, it does look like I'm in a cupboard, but it's important archival materials behind me. So on to the housekeeping. We're recording today so that you can look back at this later. We'll send you the link next week, and we'll be putting it up on our website so that anyone who wasn't able to attend today can catch up. If you could keep your cameras and mics off throughout, that would be great. It'll make it easier for people just to focus on the speakers. And if you do have any questions, rather than asking over your mics, it's quite hard for us to manage. If you could put those in the chat box instead, you'll find the icon for that on your screens. You can put those questions in the chat anytime, and our colleagues will monitor those. And then in the second half, we'll pick up those and answer them. You can also switch on captioning if that would benefit you. Just click on the button which says CC. And as Josh mentioned earlier, this grant scheme is in partnership with the Wolfson Foundation, who share our commitment to helping the theatre sector become more environmentally sustainable. As part of that incredible work that happens across the industry to move towards a more sustainable future, we wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about the Theatre Green Book. Josh, could you tell us how the Theatre Green Book can help applicants?
Yes, so many people on the call may or may not be aware, but the Theatre Green Book is a scheme that Theatres Trust was one of the lead founders in and a lead partner in currently. And it's a really incredible resource with really useful guidance on how to make your building, but also your productions and your operations within your building as sustainable as possible. So the Theatre Green Book website, which I encourage everyone to check out if they haven't already, has an incredible resource called the Building Survey Tool. It's a really simple Excel tool where you can put in data about your building, and that tool will generate a set of recommendations around what you should be prioritizing in your next steps towards making your building more sustainable. And it divides those next steps into three areas. First of all, easy wins, which is projects that you can do at relatively low cost and relatively low effort. It gives you projects that ideally you would build into your annual maintenance program for your space. And it also gives you more significant projects that you would need capital funding for. This grant scheme, the Theatre Improvement Scheme, would support any of those types of projects, anything from easy wins all the way through to capital projects within the budget of up to £20,000. So if you haven't already, do take a look at the Theatre Green Book website and do make sure that you've used those free resources. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say everyone should sign up to the newsletter, learn more about Theatre Green Book, and go on that journey towards getting the free accreditation you can get. And actually, we do put a question in the application form about whether or not you've used the Theatre Green Book. And if so, how it's informed what you've put in the application. So for starters, that's a big shout out to the folks at the Green Book and the really useful and free resources you can get from them. So for now, we'll move on to information about the grant itself. So Jack, what is the main purpose of this fund?
As is probably obvious by now, the focus of the Theatre Improvement Scheme is to improve the environmental sustainability of theatre buildings. Primarily, we're looking at how small interventions can produce big reductions in environmental impact. That could include purchasing key plant and machinery, it can involve replacing inefficient or outdated equipment, or it could include improvements to your building, heating, or insulation. We're open to anything that could be described as impactful and high quality, but relates to environmental improvements in your buildings. If you'd like to look through the previously funded projects in the Theatre Improvement Scheme, you can go on our webpage, and at the bottom you'll find links to all the previous successful grants. We've picked out 4 today to discuss as we think they give a real range of the type of projects we're able to support.
Yep. So one of the first ones that's worth referencing, and you can read about this on our website, is in 2023, Anne Lanterre, which is based in Stornoway in the Outer Hebrides, used a grant they got from us to fund solar panels on the roof and lithium storage batteries in the basement. So literally from top to bottom of their building. And those two interventions would cover general energy usage during the daytime and also cover most of the consumption during the peak evening period too. Another really great example is the Metropolitan Arts Centre in Belfast, who installed air source heat pumps to provide primary heating and efficient cooling, and which reduced their reliance on gas and electric heating, improved comfort for their audiences and their staff, and cut their emissions by 1.4 tonnes of carbon per year. Excuse me. And Jack, you actually used to work for a venue that received one of our grants, isn't that right?
That's right. I previously worked at the Stephen Joseph Theatre in Scarborough on the North Yorkshire coast, and earlier this year they replaced the house lights in their main auditorium with LED lighting. It's estimated that the project would result in an 83% reduction in kilowatts generated per hour, which would lead to a 257 kilogram carbon reduction per year. And finally, the Small World Theatre in Cardigan, Wales used their grant to repair 3 crucial features of their venue's environmental credentials. They first replaced the rainwater harvesting pump, which serves their toilets, sinks, and washing machines. They repaired their sedum roof, which provides insulation, extracts carbon, and boosts oxygen. And they repaired walls which were showing sign of damp, and to improve insulation and reduce heating costs.
So definitely go and check out some of those previous grant recipients on our website. And I think one of the things that's really important from each of those examples is they have some really clear metrics they've been working towards, which is really key in thinking about the application you want to make, but also they are different in scale and relate to the specifics of their own building. And we'll talk more about that a bit later. But hopefully it gives you a sense of the range of projects that we fund through this program. So next, we're going to have a chat about eligibility. So as I've said earlier, the full criteria are in the guidance notes that are on our website. But as sometimes organizations make applications having not read the full eligibility criteria, and it's really important that you do, because otherwise you are unfortunately wasting your time. So we're going to pick up a few details today to make sure that your organization is eligible to apply for a grant. So Jack, what do people need to be? Sorry, first question, Jack. Do people need to own their buildings if they're applying for their grant?
We're open to applications from groups that either own or manage their buildings. If you lease your building, there needs to be more than 5 years left on that lease, and we'll need to see a copy of the lease. That's because we need to be confident in the long-term impact of the grant. Secondly, you'll need all the relevant permissions in place for the scheme. If it isn't your building, you'll need written permission from the owner, and we'll need to see that as part of the application. If planning permission is required for your project, then you'll need to have that in place before you apply as well. The Theatres Trust is a statutory consultee in the planning system, so we can support you with any planning permission inquiries you have. And if you think you might need planning permission, please do get in touch and we can advise. Josh, does an organisation need to be a charity to apply for these grants?
It's a good question, which we often get asked. And so, to be really clear, anyone who is incorporated as a not-for-profit organization can apply for this grant. So, that, of course, could be a charity, but it also could be a CIC, a community interest company. And this grant is also applicable to theatres that are operated or owned and operated by local authorities, including town and borough councils. But if you are a for-profit commercial organization running a theatre, you cannot apply for this grant scheme. And then in terms of wider finances, the organization needs to be able to provide at least 2 years of accounts for their organization. That's to make sure that we have an understanding and some insurance about the financial viability of the organization. And we find that accounts, and lots of grant makers find this, are the best method to understand the financial viability of your organization. A bit like Jack said, with having a lease on your building of at least 5 years, we want to make sure that the investment we're making is going to have some long-term impact onto that space. So let's have a think about what the spaces actually do as a theatre space. So Jack, can any theatre building apply to this grant?
You need to be open and running a year-round programme of live performance, and we've classified that as being at least 30 performances a year of theatre, dance, comedy, musicals, or any mixture of those. Unfortunately, we can't fund venues that are primarily music venues, and we also can't fund cinemas. If cinema forms part of your overall function as a performance venue, that's okay. And we have had a question in the past about NT Live, and I'm afraid that it doesn't qualify as live performance unless you are the National Theatre. Josh, what if the organisation has previously applied to either the Theatres Trust or the Wolfson Foundation directly?
It's a really good question, and there's a bit of a nuance here. So if you or your organization has previously had a grant from us, from the Theatres Trust, whether it's through this scheme or whether it's through any of our other grant programs, you can't apply for another award, another grant, until at least 12 months after the date that we received your final evaluation report for your previous grant. So if you're not sure whether your organization's had a previous grant from us, and more importantly, whether the evaluation report has been provided or not, you can reach out to us and we can clarify that. So it's really important. If you would like to apply for another grant, and we are very competitive, but we do allow applications years after, you do have to have filled your evaluation report in and have waited at least 12 months from that. It's also worth noting that the Wolfson Foundation operates its own grant schemes that you can apply to the foundation directly. They do focus exclusively on capital work for a number of types of organizations, including arts organizations, and you can find more details about that work on their own website. And you can apply for a grant through this program while also applying directly to the Wolfson Foundation, but it has to be for a separate project. So you can't apply to both Theatres Trust, Theatre Improvement Scheme, and the Wolfson Foundation for the same project simultaneously, but you can apply to us both for different projects at the same time. So Jack, if we now think more of the criteria for assessment, if an organisation is eligible and they put in an application, what are the things that we'll be looking at when we look at their applications?
We assess the application against the following criteria, and we break it down into 3 different sections. The first section is your theatre, the second section is improving sustainability, and the final section is project management and delivery. In the Your Theatre section, what we want to hear about is your theatre and how does that fit into the local theatre ecologies? What communities are you serving? What are your ambitions for the future? And how are you achieving excellence in those ambitions? And the really important bit is that we ask you to define excellence for your organisation. That could be through producing shows or community engagement programmes or any of the other ways that theatres can serve their communities. We do ask for audience numbers in this section, so we know how many people our decision making is affecting. But I want to stress that numbers isn't the only scoring criteria here. It's more about the quality and range of the work that you do and what that means to the people in your particular community. The Your Theatre section has a weighting of 5 points out of a possible 20. Josh, could you tell us about the heart of the application, improving sustainability?
Yes, although I will just come back to the excellence point because maybe we'll discuss this more in the Q&A, but I think it's really important just to reiterate what Jack said. It's about how you define excellence, but we want organizations to be able to talk about the excellence of the work they do, whether it's on stage or with communities or wider, but really think about how you articulate the brilliant work you're doing because that's really important to us and also to the Waltham Foundation. If we think about sustainability and improving sustainability section of the application, this is where you tell us about the project, what the project is and what you want to do, and more importantly, the impact the project will have on your organization, your theatre, and the people it serves. And that part of the application is weighted with 10 points out of 20. So it is 50% of the scoring matrix. And in this is where you need to make a compelling case for the environmental impact of the work you want to do. And as is made very clear in the guidance, and we've talked about today and we'll keep talking about, you need to be able to demonstrate that there are going to be quantifiable benefits in terms of environmental sustainability and that you have a clear mechanism in place to evaluate, monitor, and report against those quantifiable benefits. As I mentioned at the top of this webinar, the Theatre Green Book is a really helpful tool in this resource, and I'd recommend again looking through the resources they have on their website to help structure your application. And just like the piece about excellence that Jack spoke about, every individual organization will have different priorities. We don't have any preferred type of improvement. What we need to see is a clear articulation of why this project is the best for your organization you're building at this time to make the most improvements to your environmental sustainability. So it is really driven by what you and your building needs. So Jack, that's the improving sustainability section. What about the final section of the application?
Final section is project management and delivery, which also has a score weighting of 5 points. Most importantly, we need you to provide a project budget, which is backed up by quotes from suppliers. In terms of the budget, it's worth pointing out that we're happy to consider applications where our funding will only cover part of the project cost. If that's the case, you'd need to demonstrate what the other sources of funding are likely to be and where you are in terms of achieving those. And you can mark those sources of funding as either confirmed or expected in your budget. You'll also need to be able to demonstrate that the project will be well managed financially and operationally by an experienced team. You could demonstrate that by putting in the track record of a team member or board member and how similar projects have been dealt with in the past. Or if it's the sort of projects where you're working with consultants or specialists, then give us some detail about their relevant experience. You'll also need to be able to show an understanding of the risks that might be involved and demonstrate that you've got plans in place to mitigate those risks if there is a problem. And finally, you need to be able to demonstrate that the project is achievable within the timescale of the fund. We require grants to be spent within a year of our award, so please bear that in mind. So those are the criteria against which we assess your applications. I'll now hand back to Josh for a bit more information.
Thanks, Jack. And just do a little bit more on that project management and delivery, and I'm sure we'll get into this in the Q&A. But often when people talk about risks, they feel like there are no risks. There are no risks attached to this project at all. And actually, what we really want to see in that project management and delivery plan is a clear articulation of what the risks are. And to be clear, one of the risks might be not getting the funding and what that means. So the more rigorous you are in articulating the risks, what that looks like and how we'll mitigate that, that gives us more confidence in the application and the delivery of the project. So don't shy away from risks, don't shy away from from talking about those, we know that any capital project of any scale comes with risks, and we want to really see that you've thought about that and have a clear understanding of how you intend to navigate it. So hopefully, from what we've spoken about, you have a bit more clarity about what you need to be as an organization in order to be eligible to apply and what you need to talk about in your application. And it's really important, as Jack has said, that when you're ready to apply, you've also got all the relevant permissions as well as relevant quotes for the application that you're making. We are happy that for this grant to entirely fund a project, so we can be the sole funder and you don't have to have match funding. So that's an aspect which makes the fund unique. Equally, though, if you are asking for our money to be part of a match funding or part of a bigger project, you can apply, but we will need to understand how far you've got with your other fundraising for the rest of the money and where the grant would fit into that wider budget. So I'm just going to briefly talk through some next steps about making the application. So when you're ready to complete your application, you do it through our online portal, which we run through Jotform, and everything works through that system, and you will get a notification once it's been submitted. We will let you know about the outcome of your application within about 10 weeks of the application deadline, give or take, and we will let applicants know either way whether they have been successful or not successful with the application. So Jack, if applicants are successful, how quickly do they need to start their projects?
We'll hold on to the grant for you for up to a year after the date of the offer letter that we've sent. If we don't hear back from you within that year, we may need to reclaim the grant unless there are really exceptional circumstances as to why you've not been able to carry out the works applied for. But if that is the case, please get in touch with us. We want to have a conversation. We want to have dialogue about that. So just don't not return our calls, basically. And once you've told us you're ready to do the work, we'll then send you the grant in full. And once you've completed the project, we'll send an evaluation form over as well. Josh, could you tell us why the evaluation forms are so important?
Yes, I'm on my evaluation soapbox now. I know that doing a capital project of whatever scale is really challenging, and once it's done, you feel really relieved, and often evaluations fall by the wayside. But as I said at the beginning, we are not the primary funder for this. We work in partnership with the Wolfson Foundation, and we need to keep making the case to the Wolfson and the Wolfson's trustees about the impact of this work. And the impact isn't just doing the capital project, it's what that capital project then allows our theatres to be able to do. So if we don't get your evaluation, we can't consolidate the evaluation of the entire program and make the case for further investment from the Wolfson Foundation, but other trusts and foundations as well. And as we said, we want applications to embed evaluation into their project management so that it's not a box ticking exercise, but really is useful to understand the wider term impacts of this work. And it doesn't have to be significant huge ranging impacts, but impacts that make a difference to your building, your organization, and your communities. So that's why evaluation is so key. It also, for us, helps us make a wider case of advocating not just to trust and foundations, but also to the government about where there is need for investment in the sector. So your evaluation report really does feed into a wide aspect of the advocacy work that we at Theatre Trust do across the country. So once you finish your project, you will have up to 3 months to send that evaluation report in. And it's really important that once the project's completed, you get that to us within that 3 months. Obviously, the sooner, the better. And as we mentioned earlier, if you want to apply for a future grant, you have to have completed your evaluation to be able to apply. So that's really important. And as a reminder, if you do want to apply in the future, you need to leave a 12-month gap between the receipt of the evaluation and making another application to us.